All right, welcome back to Fast Gadgets. I'm pretty sure this is going to be one of my more controversial videos, but honestly, although I appreciate your opinions, I've made my decision based on what my needs are, so I'm going to go for it, and I got what I got. You know that we're talking about a new smartphone. To start off with, I have the Galaxy Note 4, and there's some issues with it. It's starting to age. The processor isn't as fast as it used to be. I'm noticing 20 to 30-second waits sometimes when I click an application. It was a unlocked phone that was for AT&T that I've been using on Metro PCS, and I have problems with call dropouts and things like that. Even though it does support all the bands, you know, it's just older. It's on Android 5.01, and I thought, you know, I've been on Android forever and I love it, but 5.01's pretty old. I could do an update manually myself, but I can't get an over-the-air update because it keeps trying to ping the AT&T servers, which isn't working, of course, because it's on Metro PCS, and it will not look at the Metro PCS servers. And yes, I have changed all appropriate settings. It's a baked-in firmware issue, and I really don't want to try to load another version of Android on it. So I decided to go out and get a new phone. The criteria for the new phone wasn't too awful difficult. I'm still going to continue to use the Note 4 as a camera. It works great. Right now I've got a test camera, the Logitech C920 HD 1080p, sitting right over here next to this camera. And of course, I've got my Snowball mic. So I'm going to have two cameras basically to make use of at some point. I found out something interesting with Linux in the background here. If you watched my other video, if the screensaver comes up, OBS simply stops recording. Well, it keeps recording, but the USB camera freezes for whatever reason. So I've set the screen timeout for an hour. I'm hoping that'll work because I'd like to have two videos so I can switch back and forth when I do my review of the C920, and we'll get an idea of how good it looks and whether or not it's comparable to the Yoga. Excuse me. Whether or not it's comparable to the Galaxy Note 4 camera, which can go up to 4K 30 frames a second. Uh-oh. Heard a bad sound on my server back here. And everything looks okay. Oh, I have updates. Whoopee. We'll get to that some other time. So let's get to the new phone straight away. Sort of. Sorry. Again, this is going to be very controversial, but I decided to buy, and we also bought one for my wife, an iPhone. But this is actually the iPhone. I don't know if you can see that really well. iPhone SE. And I'm going to show it to the other camera so that I can, again, get it in on both of them. So I've already had the box open, but I'm going to do a quick unboxing just to show you what's in it, because I haven't looked through everything yet. I pulled the charger and the phone out, charged it up. And we have some specs on the back here. I ended up getting the iPhone SE Space Gray, 64 gigabytes. And before we open this box, another reason that I did get one of these is because I do use my Macs more, and one of the things that I do want to do is be able to transfer notes and documents and other things using iCloud. Am I going to become a full-time Mac user? No, not really. Not even a little bit. The thing is, I still love Linux. I've got it running on my computer back here. I do 99% of my editing in Linux. I've been using the Office apps more and more and more. And if I don't have to use Windows for work in Office 365, then I'm using Linux. And then every once in a while, I use my Mac to do other things. But I like to learn new things. This is going to be, of course, the very first iPhone I've ever bought. Now, one of the criticisms, and I can already hear the comments dropping, you're such an idiot. Why didn't you buy an iPhone 10? You're such an idiot. You could have got an iPhone 8, blah, blah, blah. Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, I'm not an early adopter. I'm not one that usually goes out and buys $1,000 to $1,200 phones. I'm on a fixed income. I'm teaching and only part-time right now. So I'm not going to go out and I'm not going to buy an iPhone 10. I really have zero interest in that kind of thing. I did want to get and learn about the iPhone ecosystem. I will always have been a Windows user. Yeah. I've always been a Android user, and it's what I'm used to. So I wanted to try something a little different. So I'm going to switch the camera angle, and we're going to get right into it. All right, so quick and simple here. It comes in a rather simple, nice, typical white box that you see with Apple. And inside, first thing we have is the phone. Now, I will, again, want to point out that I have already opened this, and I actually do have a glass shield on the surface of the phone here, as well as I have a case that I normally use on it, and it actually comes with a kickstand. So I really like that case. Pretty simple and straightforward. So I have done quite a bit of setup with the phone already and learning about it, and we're going to get into that as well. This phone fulfilled my first requirement, which was that it's much speedier. I don't know if it's really because it's iOS or because the phone is quite a bit newer than the Galaxy Note 4 that I had, but it does fulfill one of the main requirements I had, in that the processor is much faster, and I found that the system works really well, and I wasn't expecting it to actually be this nice as far as speed goes, but it seems so fluid and smooth. I really like that. I have had a bit of a time getting used to some of the functionality. I'm still learning about how things work in iOS, but I would say for the most part it's very intuitive for me. Now I'm going to set this aside for a minute, which I always hate hearing when I'm listening to an unboxing, but I've never seen the contents of the box for an iPhone, so I'm going to go through it. So in here, we got some kind of paperwork. I'm not sure what yet. I've never looked in here. Okay, so I've got a device. Apparently this is to put in another SIM card if I ever need to, and I don't think I will. It's got a very, very simple card. Says, welcome to iPhone, learn more, sends me to a URL and get support, and another URL, and some fine print about it, and of course, we always have Apple stickers. Has anybody actually used your Apple stickers? I'm just curious. Now, one of the things I always do when I buy a new electronic device, of course, is keep it very nice, keep everything together, and try to maintain its resale value, keep it very clean and organized. This phone didn't cost me very much at all, and I'm pretty happy with it. All right, so that goes back together. In the box, we've got a USB to iPhone port charger. I think it's called Lightning. I really don't know. I'm embarrassed to say. And again, I'm still learning. And I have a basic USB charger. Now, I charged it last night, and looking at this charger, I wouldn't think it's any kind of fast charger, but it actually did charge the phone in the first 33% in literally 5 minutes. So, I mean, I'm going to get some kind of rapid charging, at least 30% or so. So I've also got a pair of earbuds, and this leads me to another one of my requirements. A very nice looking case here too. Got an Apple logo on the back, a plastic case to wrap it into, and a volume. I don't know if it has a speaker in it, or excuse me, a microphone. I'm probably going to look into all that later. I have Bluetooth devices I can use with it as well. So pretty nice setup with the box and everything. With the phone, here's a couple other things I really like about it. One is it's really compact and small in my pocket. It feels like a premium device. I really like the look and feel of the unit, and I can see I've got a few fingerprints on there already. That's one thing I have noticed, is it is a fingerprint magnet. It has a switch here to turn the audio off. It has the up and down volume controls. On the back, we've got mostly aluminum. I've heard that this aluminum is not all that strong, so it can rub, and the surface of it can rub and become worn, but I'm always going to have it in a case anyway. On the bottom, we have what looks like stereo speaker grills, or it may just be a single speaker grill and possibly a microphone grill. We have the charging port, and what I still like about phones is the standard headphone plug-in. Now, one of the big things I do with my phones is use lavalier microphones that I plug in. So I really do like that. I know that you can get adapters and still be able to plug in this equipment. So it's not the end of the world if I do get a newer phone. You know, I'm not going to worry too much about that. On the very top here, we have the power button. There is, again, on the back, an LED flash. It looks like there's two, maybe one with a warmer color. And I've heard the camera is 12 megapixel. Now, I've taken a couple of pictures with it, and I've found it to be serviceable. It seems to work really well. Let's go ahead and go into camera, and I'll grab the box here and get out of the shadow and take a picture, and we'll have a look at it. Picture looks halfway decent. You know, it's not like it's the greatest camera in the world, at least that's what I've heard, but it's good enough for me. Now, my wife got the same phone. Hers is the rose gold color. She really liked that one. And one of the things we did pretty much immediately was use it to do a Apple QuickTime call. And I've never, QuickTime, man, I really got to learn my terms. Apple FaceTime call. And it was interesting. It worked really well. So I thought that was pretty cool. That was my first time doing that, and that worked well. I've already got most of my applications on here that I use quite frequently. I've grouped some as well, which I think is pretty neat. I have like the apps I use most commonly. I put into different folders, and one I created here called Seldom Used because, quite frankly, I mean, there's so many of these apps I don't use, and I haven't learned a lot yet about this particular operating system, so I don't really know yet what I'm going to do as far as streamlining it and making it work better for me. Does it work well? Yes. Is it fast enough? Absolutely. Does it do everything I need it to do? Yeah, it does. I mean, I wanted to get into the Apple iPhone ecosystem and learn about it. One of the things that I did right off, let's see if I can remember how to do this. Did the software update, and I updated it. I see I keep getting a glare with my lights. I did an update to iOS 11.1.2, and that took about, I thought it was going to take forever, but I think it took about 20 minutes. So I'm on iOS 11. I haven't noticed any kind of stuttering or problems with it. It still seems to be running just fine. And, you know, in my opinion, there's really no issues where it's slowed down because of the iOS installation. So I'm overall quite impressed. So talking about the interface, you know, I have a bit of a learning curve. I've learned quite a lot in the last day. I mean, I've only really been using it for about 6 hours. How to add widgets here, for example. How to find any, whoops, not really what I wanted to do, coming from the top, any messages I have and things like that. Coming from the side, let's do that again. Coming from the side, I have some of the alerts and things like that, and reminders and other things, and I know that I can also organize these, so I have organized them to some extent. I watched a couple of videos on YouTube before we bought the phones. My wife wanted a really small phone. She's very particular about the size of the phone. And I kind of see her reasoning, and I actually ended up liking it quite a bit myself. So I actually did decide, you know what, I think she's right. I'm going to try one of the smaller phones. I've always had a phablet, so to speak, and I found I really like it. It's not very difficult for me to read. I found that I'm able to read it just fine. And I did increase the font size just a little bit. So if I swipe up and go to the font settings, which I added here, normally it's this setting here, and I increased it just a little bit. The only downside to that, if I go into Slashdot here, you can see that some third-party apps simply don't pay attention to the size here, and it's unfortunate. So if I go into a story, reading it isn't bad, but when I go down, I always love to read the comments. They're a hoot. Now look at the size of the font for the comments. This is really, for me, very difficult to read with my glasses on, and I'm very nearsighted, so I have to, if I want to read this, take my glasses off. But the thing is, I'm mostly reading Slashdot right before I go to bed anyway to try to get me to fall asleep, so it seems to work. The salesperson, taught us a couple of things. Well, me especially. My wife already knows about Mac stuff. She just gravitates to it naturally. But I've learned some basics, and I know enough to get around the phone. I have my essential apps installed. I think I'm beginning to understand now why the iPhone people say iPhones are so great. Strictly avoiding the hype of a phone, meaning, going out and getting a brand new state-of-the-art iPhone X. I'm looking strictly at utility. This thing does what I need it to do. It's a nice small size. There are very few phones anymore that are small like this. It's very fast. It's pleasant to use. It feels good in the hand. All the applications I need are in here. I actually wanted to show you a couple of apps that I thought I wouldn't be able to use are the Gear. So as you know, I have a Samsung Gear S3 Frontier, and I was concerned about whether or not I would be able to make use of it, and yes indeed I can. There are Gear S3 compatible apps, and then of course I have the corresponding Samsung S Health. So any of the S Health information will be incorporated from my phone into here, which I think is great. Now I use Gmail exclusively, so I decided I didn't really need the Gmail app because the phone app was good enough that's built in, the email app. So I just added my accounts, and that made it very simple for me and very quick. I like the phone. I mean, it's a really good little phone, and it does what I need it to do. Could I have bought a more expensive one? Probably, but I paid cash for it, and I only wanted to spend a few $100s. I wasn't interested in spending more than $200 to $300 on a phone. I just wanted something that was more serviceable. As far as call quality goes, this phone has very, very, very clear call quality, and I noticed no dropping on my older Galaxy Note 4, which was an unlocked phone originally for AT&T. Call quality wasn't that great. I found that I had drops and fuzziness and problems like that. As far as how it sounds when I make a phone call, it sounds great. It has a, instead of a tinny typical phone sound, you can hear more bass. It just sounds more natural, like you're really sitting there talking to the person. Speakerphone isn't that great, but I probably won't use it all that much, to be honest. I'm happy with, just making typical calls. I thought because the keyboard was so small, it was going to be so much harder for me to send and receive messages using the keyboard, and it's not. It actually works better than the Galaxy Note 4, which I was using SwiftKey on, and I still had a problem with SwiftKey. So this one's actually slightly more accurate. It's no worse than the larger phone that I had, the phablet. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're looking for a very inexpensive Apple phone to get you into the market, This one works very well for me. I quite frankly would have been satisfied with the 32 gigabyte phone, but at the time they only had a 64 gigabyte, so I took the 64. But I'll be using the Note 4 for the video and all that stuff, and this one will be strictly my phone. So mostly it's going to be pictures and things like that in it, and I think it's going to work very well for me. All in all, based on the reviews that I saw and my personal experience, if you just need a nice little Apple phone, the iPhone SE will work well for you. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did like it, I hope you consider subscribing and sharing the video, and drop me a comment. Let me know if you're considering getting one or if you did get one, and what your opinion is of the phone and what you think about it. Hope to see you next time on Fast Gadgets, and have an awesome weekend.